Hey, I'm Colin, and today we're going to be installing this Rennline stainless valved exhaust on this 991.1 911 behind me. This exhaust is a perfect upgrade for your 991.1 911. This exhaust lets you keep your relationship healthy between you and your neighbors due to the dynamic valve technology built into our exhaust system. Due to the valve design, when open, we saw an increase of 5 horsepower and 9 foot-pounds of torque to the wheels without a tune. Not only does this exhaust sound and look amazing, but it also performs just as good as it looks. So our first step in this procedure is going to be removing our rear bumper cover and our rear taillights. So we have 4 T30 screws underneath of the rear spoiler. You can pop this up using the switch in the interior. And then we have these 2 T25 screws underneath this access plate. So now that we have our 2 bolts removed for our adjusters here for the taillight, now we can remove it. So in this corner, there's like a little, it's like a sliding clip almost that it inserts to. If you're worried about removal on this, you can tape the bottom of the bumper here so we don't scratch it up. I think we'll be fine. So we're just gonna pull gently, wiggle it if you have to. So now we have access to our connector. It's just like any other Volkswagen Audi group connector. We're just gonna push in and pry on this tab. Next up, we're going to remove our wheel off the back of our car here. You don't really need to because you can get access to all these bolts, but just for sake of clarity, we're going to remove it so we can show you where all the bolts are. So normally there's supposed to be 2 fasteners here for the bumper cover. This car is missing them, but just know there are supposed to be 2 fasteners there. There's one up under here, it's a T25. And then back around where the corner of the tail light is, there's a T30 we need to remove. Now that we have all these fasteners removed on the passenger side, we can move to the driver's side. It's the same procedure on there. Now we're going to remove the 4 fasteners on the underneath of the car. On this car, since it has this aftermarket diffuser, they're actually just Phillips head bolts. Now we can remove these 4 T30 screws, and then we should be able to remove our bumper. Before we remove our bumper cover the entire way, we're going to unplug this plug, this connector here. So now we remove our T30s. Now that we remove the rest of those fasteners and unplug that connector, we should be able to pop off our bumper cover. So we're going to start by pulling out on the bumper on this side. So there's like this plastic kind of locking tab that orients it where it's supposed to go. We pulled out there, make sure our bolts are off underneath. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, and we should be able to just remove it and gently set it on the ground. And there we go, our bumper is removed. Now we're going to remove this heat shield bracket assembly. It's going to be 5 10mm nuts, and then there's a T30 fastener right here. This is just so we can have access to the suitcase mufflers that are behind it, and we can give you guys a little bit easier access to see what we're working with. Now with all those fasteners removed, we can remove our heat shield bracket. Just pulls straight off. So now we will repeat the same removal process for the driver's side of the vehicle. Next up, to remove our exhaust, we're going to start with removing the suitcase mufflers on the sides. So this is really easy. It's 13mm bolts on the sleeve clamp, there's 2 of them. And then we're going to remove these 2 13mm nuts on this side for the bracket, and then we should be able to just pull the mufflers off. And the procedure is the exact same on both sides. Now that that's unbolted, we can slide this out of the way as far as we can. And that should give us enough room to pull our muffler off. Now that we have our suitcase removed, we have really easy access to all these bolts for the flange, for the cat. So if yours has a bolt here, this is a 13mm, and the nut is a 12mm. It might be different if your car already has an aftermarket exhaust setup. So these bolts and nuts could realistically be any size for you. Now that we have both of our flanges unbolted, we should be able to remove our crossover pipe. Just like that. Now that we have the vehicle fully disassembled, we can install our first suitcase muffler. So this is pretty easy to install. It has this slotted bracket on the back that allows for easier adjustment. So let's get it thrown on, then we can throw the rest of the exhaust on. now before we put the center section of the muffler on, I'm going to put these exhaust clamps on so I don't have to bend them and do it again later. You also want to make sure when you put these on, you want to orient these in a way to where they're not going to be touching something. I'm just going to put them on the outside here, and this heat shield can move all around and this can still be adjusted. So as long as they're out of the way, should be good. Now before we install our center section of our muffler, we're going to install our gaskets. So these gaskets are no longer available from Porsche, so we're just going to reuse these metal gaskets. They look fine. They are specific to the flange as well. What I mean is they're only going to line up a certain way, so make sure that all these holes line up. If you have your factory studs on your Cat, this shouldn't be a problem for you, but just remember that before you put the muffler on. Now it's time to install our center section of our muffler here. It is a lot easier if the factory studs are still on the Cats to kind of hang it by the flange, but if they broke off or they're missing for whatever reason like ours are, you can grab a second set of hands to help. It would make a difference here. Now that we have our gasket properly installed and our exhaust put up to where it needs to be, we're going to install our hardware. So we recommend that you use these factory copper nuts. Since we had to replace these studs, we just have a normal stainless steel bolt. Now we're going to move on to tightening these AccuSeal clamps. So this nut is a 15 millimeter, and it's important when you install AccuSeals to make sure that this center section is in relatively the middle of these here. You don't want to put this part of the clamp on this seam here because you'll bend the exhaust and oval it. So you're going to want to install it relatively in the middle, and you're going to want to make sure that the edge of the clamp is at the edge of this union piece here. It just ensures that everything's going to seal how you want it to. On any type of these AccuSeal type exhaust clamps, you want to make sure if you look in this gap here that you don't see up inside of the exhaust, like this for example. So if you were to tighten it like this with that gap there, that would create a crazy exhaust leak. So you want to make sure that your pipes are inserted all the way before you tighten them. Now that we have our center section installed, we can finally tighten our brackets for our suitcase mufflers. Now that we have our muffler fully installed, it's time to install these little rubber bushings. This is going to hold your vacuum line so you don't have to zip tie it or put it anywhere else. So if you're having trouble installing some of these bushings, you can use some silicone lubricant. Just give it a quick spray, and it should make it a little bit easier to slide these in. Now it's time to install the rest of our exhaust portion here. So this is going to be for the muffler section. The swivel tip is going to go on here. So same as the other seals, there's an AccuSeal here. Just going to insert this onto our muffler like so. And we'll make sure we have the rotation correct once we get to tighten everything down. Then we can install our clamp. So now that we have our exhaust fully installed and our vacuum line grommets are also installed on the muffler section, we're going to install our vacuum line itself. So to route this, I'm going to route it from the underneath. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but I think this is going to be the easiest. So I have some mechanics wire shoved into the end of this vacuum line here. This is just so I can route it up where I want to from down here. Then I can go up above the car and feed it the rest of the way through. So I'm just going to go around this heat shield here, around this other heat shield above it. Like so. Now we can go up top and feed it the rest of the way through. Next up, we're going to remove our fans from the top of the engine. So we're just going to pull up and out this way, like so. And then there's some connectors underneath we need to unplug for the fans. And there we go. Now that we can easily see our vacuum line, I'm just going to grab the mechanics wire here, feed it up through just like this. We don't want to cut this to our final length yet because we're not sure exactly where we want to route the line. That's the thing with vacuum lines on valve exhausts. You can pretty much play with them, put them anywhere you want. You can make it look as OEM as possible. There's a lot of versatility because the kit comes with a pretty decent amount of vacuum line. So let's get this routed and installed. So now to power the valve system. For this, we're going to be using what is known as an ADA circuit. So this is basically just going to plug into a key-on fuse in the fuse panel here. We're going to add some fuses on to this, and then we'll just wire this directly to power in the box. So this is going to ensure that the battery isn't going to die over time or be drained over time by us just wiring it to direct power. To test where our key-on source is, we're going to be using a multimeter here. So we're going to be switching over to DC power right here. So this is going to require a friend to operate the ignition so we can figure out which fuse is our key-on source. So now that we're on the correct setting, we're going to use our ground lead here to find some type of ground. I know that this post right here is good enough. And we're going to take our power and just touch the top of the fuse. So the ignition is off currently, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see, we have almost no power on our multimeter. If you want to hit the ignition on, there we go, we jump up to 12 volts. Now that we're here in our textbook owner's manual, we're going to go to page 274 and we're going to look at the fuse panel diagram. So the fuse that we're tapping into is in row D, which is the very bottom row, and we are going to be tapping into fuse number 5, and that is going to be the occupant sensing for the passenger seat. Now that we have our key-on source located and our ADA fuse installed, I've taken the liberty to run the power wire from the fuse box all the way back here. I personally didn't want to tap into any of these existing harnesses back here. I wanted to just go straight from the fuse box so there's no confusion. Realistically, this is kind of up to your preference. You can put this valve controller anywhere you want. You can put the N75 valve anywhere you want. You can get power anywhere that you want, but this is the way I did it. It's going to be different for everybody's build. So let's get this box hooked up and mounted somewhere, and then we can see if our valve works for our exhaust. Now that we have our power and our ground routed effectively and efficiently for our N75 valve, it's time to install it. So as you can see on this N75, there's an arrow. This arrow is going to be pointing towards the vacuum source. So you're going to have your vacuum source T, you're going to have your vacuum line coming off of that, you're going to have your little check valve that also has an arrow that has to point towards the vacuum source, and then you'll have a short vacuum line that goes to this outlet, and then this one is going to be going directly to your exhaust. So let's get this installed and plumbed. Our vacuum line is down here right off the throttle body. Down here we have our vacuum T and we have our small check valve. We want to make sure that the arrow on this check valve is pointing towards the vacuum source. So now we have our box fully installed and fully wired. This is where I'm putting the box. Obviously you can put this box anywhere that you desire. If you have enough length of wire, you can put it anywhere. The harness for this is also kind of long, so I just zip tied it all together and I'm just going to shove it somewhere where it's out of the way. If you want, you can shorten it to your desired length. Like I said, this is kind of your preference as to where you want to mount all of this stuff. But now we're underneath the vehicle and we can finally connect our main vacuum line to the rest of our exhaust. So these two vacuum valves here. As you can see, I routed the vacuum line up through a little gap in the heat shield kind of behind the crash bar up there, and then I have it running underneath of the intake, and then it comes around to the N75, which you saw mounted above the crash bar. So we're just going to route it through here, make a cut, put our T in, and that's going to run to both of our valves. So it's time to tighten everything on the exhaust, all the clamps, all the joints, because I want to make sure that we have full functionality of these valves before we put the whole car back together, just in case we did something wrong, we don't have to take it apart again. We're going to do our first startup before we put all of the stuff back together, as mentioned before. And before we start it, I want to wipe down this exhaust and get any fingerprints or dirt off of it, because that is going to stain onto the exhaust and burn on there once we run it. And you don't want fingerprints all over your exhaust. So let's get this thing wiped down and then we can start it up. It's pretty good. The delta's crazy. It almost sounds like stock valves open with everything shut, so it's not that loud, but right when you open them, it sounds night and day. Under load, driving it, it's probably going to sound a lot better than in the shop, but I'm excited to hear it for sure. That's pretty good. So now that we've tested that the exhaust works and we know it sounds really good, now we can throw the rest of the car back together.